God.
To me, a fan film is taking an intellectual property and doing with it what you will. A lot of people just want to make a film. They want to play in other people's sandboxes. They want to play with the character that they grew up with. The passion was there. They went to the film, they said, okay, we're gonna go do the same thing. And they have no idea how that film was made. They just tried to mirror how the film was made. It's outstanding, it's impressive. Once upon a time, there weren't a lot of fan films. You know, I went out and searched for fan films. Nowadays, they kind of come to me, I get emails. I have a site, Film Follies. There's a gazillion of them. You can certainly break them up into different groups. There's the fantasy, there's horror, there's superhero, there's sci-fi. You can break it up even bigger than that. There's Star Wars fan films or Star Trek fan films. Or there's X-Files, G.I. Joe, Harry Potter, Stargate, Batman. Don Bluth, I consider him the godfather of fan films. Even though fan films were made before him, he made a shitload of them. He went to films, he watched the film, he went home and he tried to mirror what he saw in the film. There's a fan film called Power, Slash, Ranger. Kind of took a dark take of that universe. It was on Vimeo, it was on YouTube. The people that owned the license didn't really like the dark take. They forced it down. The creators went online, did a little campaigning saying, hey fans, help us out. Fan film creators have gotten smart. I can go to YouTube and see how to do this special effect for my fan film. Or I can go to this website and, oh, I can do this for my fan film. So it seems like all these people are starting to come together, again, for this little thing called the interwebs. And it's all starting to, you know, mesh, and it's starting to grow, and it's starting to get more sophisticated. The special effects are outstanding. The makeup is outstanding. This is what fans want to see. Here's Hollywood. Here's fan films. So, all right. Maybe Hollywood's going to look at the fan films and say, maybe we'll hire these people to make these films. If someone does something different, if someone does something new, something that Hollywood hasn't done, and that's pretty enjoyable for me.
Hey gals and guys, this is Christopher Mosier from MyMediaHelper.com. Very special video for me to put together today because it's been 20 years. 20 years. I'm an old man now since I created this column called Film Follies, and it graduated from a column into a full-fledged site, and it still lives today. So this is a whole retrospect video on the 20 years of Film Follies. This is Christopher Mosier from My Media Helper, and I think I already told you that. I'm going to talk about something I haven't talked about on this channel before. The subject is fan films. For 2 decades now, I've been covering these fan-made productions through an original column and then a website called Film Follies. My recollection is somewhat sketchy to the exact details of how I started Film Follies. When I first jumped on the internet, I had a computer with a monochrome monitor. There wasn't much to do online beyond joining a chat room. I could access websites, but without the ability to view pictures, the whole experience was pretty lackluster. It's hard for me to believe it's been 20 years since I've been covering the wonderful world of fan films. It started as kind of a lark and has turned into a hobby I can't seem to break away from. When I originally discovered fan films, I didn't even know what the hell a fan film was. Back then there was no YouTube. Streaming websites were something new, with the likes of Atom.com, now owned by MTV Networks, and iFilms that turned into Spike.com, and today is now linked to the Paramount Network. I was accessing websites through WebCrawler and the Yahoo search engine before the new kid on the block that Google came on the scene. I had no idea what HTML was or what the hell to do with a cascading style sheet. There was AOL dial-up before there was Roadrunner or DSL broadband. We had one computer in the house compared to our 2 systems and 2 laptop setup we had in present day. And come to think of it, we had a big old clunky tube television in the living room as well. Today it's almost affordable to have a modest movie experience in every room in the house. As Bob Dylan clued us in, the times they are change on. Star Wars finally premiered on cable in 1983. This was back when HBO would run short films between their feature films. One of those shorts they played around when Star Wars hit the premium channel was called Hardware Wars. I'm overly confident you all know the film in which I mean. Little did I know at the time, but this would be my very first fan film experience. Growing up, I collected comic books and was a big fan of Battlestar Galactica and V and other sci-fi genre shows of that decade. I pretty much gravitated to anything comic book or science fiction related. Another thing I grew to enjoy was the early days of General Hospital with the adventures of Luke and Laura and Robert and Holly. They went into the realm of action-adventure and science fiction with stories that revolved freezing the world, ancient cults, and stolen treasures. It interested me how a series that aired 5 days a week could produce these stories on such a limited budget. All of that combined as a neat package to pave the way for my appreciation of the genre of fan film. Fast forward to the mid-90s when I met my ex-wife. Although I had owned a Commodore 64 as a teenager and have always been interested in computers, it was through her that I had my eyes open to their possibilities. When the wife at the time and I bought our first Hewlett-Packard desktop computer, it was like entering a whole new world. Sure, it took about 5 minutes to bring up an image-rich website through AOL dial-up, but back about 30 years ago, we weren't spoiled by broadband, so the wait wasn't as annoying as it would be today. I could watch a video with this new computer by either downloading a 20 meg file that took about an hour and a half, or streaming it online in a box that was about 6 inches by 6 inches. That was a bit distracting as the video would continuously buffer. It's crazy how much our ability to access the same kinds of content has changed in such a short amount of time. How I do love technology. This was the early dawn of such things as YouTube and Google. This was when high-speed internet started becoming a thing. That's when we had to wait for an hour or two to download extremely small video files to watch these things. Flash animation was all the rage. Things like Real Player and QuickTime and Windows Media Player were tools made from magic. What archaic times we lived in then. Around this time, I was in my early 30s. I was outgrowing the whole going out and pissing away a big chunk of my paycheck at some bar. It was also a time when I wanted to do something more substantial with my time. I've always loved writing, been writing off and on since I was a teenager. The internet was a perfect outlet to share my words and ideas with others. I found a site online called Cool Collecting, run by one Timothy Pribe. Cool Collecting covered everything fanboy related. Tim was open to new writers for the site, so I was happy to join his crew. The coverage began as a series of articles on the now defunct website coolcollecting.com. The first article was published on March 24th of 2002, 20 years ago. This makes me feel incredibly old. When the ex-wife and I bought our first house, we got married, I'd have my friends over. We would talk about current events as well as talk about current comic book storylines, current movies, current Star Trek episodes, current video games, and the list continues. We also jumped on the computer and watched videos. There was one film short that I've never forgotten to this day. One night, after a few beers, me and my buddy and I watched this thing called Godzilla vs. Disco Lando by Evan Mayer. We laughed our stupid asses off. With the exception of Hardware Wars several years before, Godzilla vs. Disco Lando was my first foray into the micro-genre that is fan film. Just was so incredibly bizarre and original and perfect. Yeah, I laughed my fool head off over that thing.
You look absolutely beautiful. All right. Well done. Keep it quiet. Report in.
Red leader standing by.
Gray leader standing by.
Green leader standing by.
May the force be with you.
And there were other watched. Many I can't recall. Some you might have heard of if you're in the same realm of geek that I am in, like Troops, Hidden Frontier, and Dark Redemption, and many I'll spotlight in this documentary. But that short film was the main reason I decided to base my column on that niche genre, the fan film. I decided to spotlight these entirely cool fan-made productions I've been watching for some time now into regularly featured articles, and from there Fan Film Follies was born. I don't remember why I called the column Fan Film Follies. I guess it wasn't rocket science. All three words started with the letter F and had a great flow. I don't know. Pretty good flow, maybe? I don't know. On March 24th of 2002, the first edition of Fan Film Follies appeared online. The column was extremely challenging to write. It was no easy task tracking down relevant content back then. Today there are fan films all over the internet. Back then they were very, very few and very, very far between. When writing for Cool Collecting, I learned what a webisode is, that there was a whole community of filmmakers that utilized Legos for their props and discovered the wonderful world of Flash and Shockwave. I was also able to correspond with all these amazing talented people who created these virtual gems. It was all a great experience. I wrote for Cool Collecting until they closed their doors in September of 2004. Tim wanted to focus on his career. Cool Collecting was always a catalyst for him to practice his web design and coding skills, so it just came time for him to move on. When Cool Collecting shut its doors, I decided to leave fan films behind, focusing on my creative ambitions. I'd already been working with a group of people on a variety of independent comic book ideas, and that was my focus at that point. After my Cool Collecting days, every once in a great while, I'd check out new fan films that would hit the internet. In late 2005, I stumbled on a site called Fanboy Theater, run by one fanboy, William McKenzie. As I read through his website, that old fan film itch began to scratch. There was someone else on the internet covering the same content I used to be covering, a kindred spirit, if you will. It got me excited about fan films again. I contacted Will to see if he was interested in my Fan Film Follies column for his website. And on October 31st of 2005, Fan Film Follies began again at Fanboy Theater. And that lasted about 2 months. In the early part of 2006, Will had gone missing off the cyber plane. I mean, for a good 4 or 5 months he'd gone missing. It was later that spring when I finally received an email from Will apologizing for his sudden disappearance. He had some personal things he needed to deal with, and I wanted a more stable home for my articles, so we parted ways amicably. Will and I would hook up on another fan film project a few years down the way, which I'll get to in a bit. By the time Fanboy Will resurfaced, I already combed the internet for another site to host my column. A quick Google search linked me to the comic book bin that was actively looking for new writers. I was invited into the fold by the bin founder Harvey St. Louis. Harvey? My column started at the bin on July 1st of 2006, lasting until I left in the summer of 2009. My time with the bin was an interesting one. It was the first site that allowed me to post my own articles, so that was a huge breath of fresh air. I taught myself coding thanks to the book HTML for Dummies, and that was fun to use what I learned in a practical matter. There wasn't just one reason why I left the bin. The major factor was that Fan Film Follies grew as much as they could grow there. I was getting bored. I'd been posting there for 3 years, and I didn't feel the site was embracing new formatting and technologies that were becoming available, and I hate staying stagnant. The bin also started posting some strange and at times questionable articles, which I didn't feel were significant or necessary for a site that's supposed to be about comic books. One article in particular that was posted caused my final decision to pack up my toys and go home. I hadn't read this article in 2 years, and as I read it today, it still drips of ignorance. That's my opinion, of course. Underneath it was the white man keeping the black man down and watching your backs, black men.
Why this being posted on a site about comic books and pop culture, I have no idea. The article didn't even have anything to do with either. I think the very subject matter does what all racism does, and that divides, be it towards black or whites. Yes, it does go both ways, and considering I am a crusty white guy run by a site created by a black man, and I never ever put race into the equation whatsoever, it did kind of bother me, so I thought it was time to go bye-bye. The other article was about jaywalking. What the fuck does that have to do with content we're presenting? It was just weird to me, and it was a better excuse than anything to go off and do my own thing. Even knowing I didn't agree with some other things that went on behind the scenes, it wasn't just those articles. I always wished the bin well, and I see they're still going strong. I was also interested in exploring a format called the podcast that had been popping up all over the internet for the past few years. What an incredible outlet to discuss fan films and interview the people who make them. I've been keeping in touch with fanboy William McKenzie from Fanboy Theater since his return from the unknown back in 2006, and it was only natural that we would team up as co-hosts for such an online show. And on February 16th of 2008, premiered our first episode of Film Follies podcast through the free service mypodcast.com, which closed and shut their doors, I think like a year later. And then we moved all our episodes over to TalkShoe, and they lost all our episodes when they went through an overhaul a few years back. And I've uploaded everything back up to TalkShoe, and I learned from all those experiences and have everything backed up on my own server. I'm only missing like 3 or 4 episodes, and they just happen to be on a hard drive a few states down with my ex-wife, so I need to eventually get those back. So everyone we interviewed to date has been exceptional, truly a fantastic community and a fantastic group of people. We even had a gentleman I want to mention, Mr. Jeff Smith, who contributed to the podcast with his own series of excellent Doctor Who fan film interviews. And the last episode of the Fan Film Podcast that Fanboy Will and I hosted together was posted on May 19th of 2011. And come to think of it, Fanboy Will had always talked about meeting up at a convention, finally to talk face-to-face, but as the time of this writing, that has never happened. And I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. The last time he had just gotten married, but we'll see what the future brings. It wouldn't be until another 7 years in 2018 where the Fan Film Podcast briefly came back with my good friend Jeff Clark. We were able to put together 4 episodes, and since then have maintained radio silence with also brief conversations to bring it back. The only real reason we don't is time. It took a lot of work to schedule guests, edit the audio, and post. I hate to say it, as money is definitely not everything, but it would have to be worth something to bring it back. We're just too occupied with other things. Maybe someday when I retire in another 20 years, I have more time. So let's jump back in the DeLorean, shall we, Marty, and head back to the time I finally hosted my own Fan Film Follies site. It had been on my mind for a long time, and it was the natural progression of things. In September of 2009, I opened the Fan Film Follies website. It was a liberating experience to run a site where you have the wheel. This allows the site to move with the times. Along the way, I've had like-minded people join and contribute to the site. I'd like to give a big thank you to our current and past contributors who have made this site extra special. And those names are Jeff Smith, Lee James Sands, Dr. John Wallace, Randy Hall, and Larry Longstreth. It was through the Fan Film Follies site that local Rochester, New York filmmaker Anthony Gibson contacted me about making a local Indiana Jones fan film. I knew of Gibson from his first Indiana Jones fan film he released in 2011. I'd contacted him for an interview at the time. It never panned out. It never happened. But it was a pleasant surprise to be contacted by him a couple of years later in discussions about being involved in his current project. I've been covering the genre of fan films for about 10 years by then, and it was pretty damn awesome that I now get to help make one. Finally. The video you are seeing now is the behind-the-scenes footage I took during the production. My primary job for this film was location scouting, and let me tell you that it was an awesome experience. Kind of a funny side story, but I contacted a department in Rochester, New York, that focused on helping films big and small with locations, and they were with zero help. The lady I talked to was zero help, and to my understanding, she's still around. But I found that I was on my own. I took the script and broke it down and to see what was needed, and hit the Googles to look at places that we could film, possibly. I reached out to a lot of people. And a lot of people were very receptive, so I got to go and visit them and talk to them about the film, get them excited, and we got into some pretty cool places. I was also able to get a $1 million insurance policy through a website called Fractured Atlas for our production. They basically help out smaller independent films with things of this nature. With the insurance policy in hand, that laxed a lot of people and opened a lot of doors for us that normally a no-budget independent film would normally be able to get into. That's why you see a lot of them being filmed in like parking garages or the forest. I can't take all the credit for the locations, though. A couple of them were produced by some of the cast and crew. The title of the film was to be Indiana Jones and the Legend of Bimini, starring a lot of talented local stage actors and actresses. The cameraman was pretty much an ass during the entire shoot, but he does make the film look good. Too bad his personality didn't match his abilities, but overall everyone was very professional and kind. The shoot was a long one, as everyone had full-time jobs, and juggling schedules for the production was always interesting. At that point, my job was pretty much over. All the locations had been secured, and beyond that, I just showed up. The film was completed and premiered in a local theater here in Rochester, New York in 2014, and it was an awesome experience, if I didn't say that already. Around the time of Bimini's premiere, I was contacted by Donna Davies, who was directing a documentary about fan films. She had most of it filmed by the time I was contacted, but needed some holes filled in the production. She was already coming to New York to interview author and public speaker Clive Young, who I also knew. So she and her camera guy were going to swing by to interview me, my bad self. It was a pleasure to be in the same film with all these talented people and get a chance to put a small voice on the website I'd worked so hard to create and maintain. As for the state of fan films, I will quote from an article I wrote back in March of 2016, and it all still holds up true today. Just keep in mind this was written in 2017, so we'll have to update this a little bit as I go, but pretty much the renaissance of the fan film is over. I'd say it's been over for about 7-8 years now. It may be the very reason I don't spend as much time on the website as I used to. There just aren't that many exciting fan films being made anymore. There are certainly many being made, but not in the scope of Sandy Colliver's Dead End or Shane Felix's Revelations. Sorry if I butchered your name there, Shane. Just to name a couple. In my eyes, those are really ambitious, anticipated films that had something new to say. I couldn't tell you one film being made today that is either coming out or has recently been released that even remotely reaches that level of richness and quality. And that may piss off a lot of people who still make these films or send me these films. Just keep in mind I've been watching these things for close to 20 years. Well, 20 years now. Not even close. The websites that used to cover these films have also all but evaporated into the wind. Clive Young's Fan Film Cinema has gone from website to Twitter, barely ever updated. TheForce.net, the film section anyways, that's kind of withered. And Fanboy Will Mackenzie's Fanboy Theater is gone. It's not even online anymore. Anyone remember the Fan Film Forum? That's super long gone. Even the new kid on the block, Love Fan Film, seems to be withering on the vine, and I think that's gone defunct about 4 years ago. It seems the Fan Film Follies is pretty much the only site that tries to remain active. Even I lack the time and excitement to make updates on a regular basis. And another reason I don't update the site much is I do this alone. I used to have some great writers who hung their hat here, running their own columns. They're all doing their own thing now, which is awesome. There was also more sense of fun and community 5+ years ago when other people shared the common interest of fan films. Fanboy Will and myself had our own podcast where we talked to these fan film makers. Now it all just seemed to die out. Perhaps if some new blood came along excited about fan films, it would rekindle the old spark in me and the site. There are a few other things over the past few years that explain the reasons I don't post a lot on these newer fan films. I'll give you some examples. First off, a lot of these newer films are small on plot. It seems that people behind the new breed of fan film only want to show you how cool their fight choreography is or their special effects can be.
That's all well and good, but that doesn't set you apart from other dozen fan films being sprayed all over YouTube doing the exact same thing. I just watch them in boredom. If I'm bored viewing them, then I'm pretty sure the people that come to this site feel the same way, so I just don't post them. Case in point, let's take the Star Wars fan films. How many more times do we have to see the same lightsaber battle over and over and over again? Little on plot, big on lightsaber. There are tons of them out there. They visually look great. They look very pretty, but how many of these things can people watch? If you're going to make a Star Wars fan film or any other genre or any other intellectual property, bring something new to the table. It can be frustrating to watch a well-produced film do the same thing 100 other well-produced Star Wars films are doing. Another pet peeve of mine, and not so much anymore, is Heath Ledger Joker. These films are still being made, and a crazy amount of them are posted all over the internet. Great, you can do a Heath Ledger Joker impression, so can 3 million other people. Make a film with your own interpretation of the Clown Prince. And as I said, not so much anymore, but it still holds true. If something comes out of Hollywood, there's so much mirroring of that exact same thing instead of going off and doing your own interpretation. And I get the lack of high production fan films today. People want to spend money to make films based on their own ideas instead of someone else's intellectual properties. That's quality. You should. If they're in the genre of what I cover on this site, I'll gladly post them, even to the fact they're technically not a fan film. The only problem with me seeking them out is there's probably one really good one out there out of 100 stinkers. Finding that good one is a whole other issue. If you're going to take time to make a fan film, do something innovative and creative. Don't rehash the same old tired format that someone else has already done. Be fresh. I don't even care if the production values aren't up to snuff. If you're doing something I haven't seen before, then call me interested. I mean, look at the stuff I used to cover before fan films really got huge. I mean, the production values were very low, but it was something new. It was something different. It was something I haven't seen before. And please don't get me wrong, I never want to diminish anyone's efforts. I've been involved in enough smaller produced films to understand how much work they are. Just look at it this way. It's not any different than Hollywood movies. If a Hollywood movie has nothing new to give us, it is using the same old tired formula 15 other movies already used. It just bores the hell out of me, and I'm sure most people. Fan films are no different. And that's my rant. Some thoughts I had when standing back and giving a deep look into these websites I've been running over 2 decades now. Is this site going anywhere? Not until I die. I won't post as much as I used to, which I don't. But if I see a quality fan film out there among the so-so efforts, I will certainly spotlight it here among the other golden gems of old. And so here we are in 2022. I'll more than likely be running the site to my grave. so get ready for the future of what fan films are going to offer. It'll be very interesting to see where the next 10 years will take us. With the technology and sophistication of the new generation of filmmakers, fan films are going to close the gap even further concerning your typical Hollywood blockbuster. I can't end this brainless rant without thanking all the talent behind the productions we cover here on Fan Film Follies. Some of the films may be a little bit rough around the edges, but I applaud anyone who could take limited resources in the creation of a work of art. And of course, I have to thank all of our readers, because without you, this website wouldn't exist.
And that's the origins and history of the Fan Film Follies. Thank you for indulging me with my trip down memory lane, a little nostalgia there. And I hope you enjoyed the video for what it was. And I hope it wasn't too boring. I know a lot of it was kind of personal stuff as far as how the Follies grew and still exist here today, and probably will be there. I think in retrospect, again, I think Hollywood has a lot to do with the fan films not being as big as they used to be. Just to the Hollywood is now producing stuff that we wanted to see years ago, and they're doing it now. And fan films were basically they were filling that gap, and I think Hollywood has taken over. So that's really, I think, in my opinion, why they're not as big as they used to be. But who knows what the future will bring. I'll still cover them as long as there's fan films around. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. I thank you again, gals and guys. I appreciate you as always. If you could just share, like, and hit the bell below. There's one other thing, right? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay, gals and guys. Thank you very much, and I'll be doing a couple more fan film videos. I'm going to do a top 10 fan film video, and then I'll probably do something else, which I'm still trying to figure out. All right. Well, take care.